January board meeting of Ignite CDA for the year 2024. Happy New Year, everybody. We'll stand and help me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Do we have any public comment from the crowd? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar, including approval of the board meeting minutes for December 20th, 2023, approval of payables as submitted, and approval of the district monthly financial statements.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next up is time for the 2023 draft annual report. Tony, do you want to walk us through the legalities of all this? And then we have to have a public meeting. And did we get any comment from written email? Or?
No, we did not receive any written comment, but so just to refresh everybody's memories about our process here. So back in 2011, the state statute changed, and it now requires an urban renewal agency to accept public comment on their annual report prior to submittal to City Council. The following Ignite CDA process has been established to meet the statute requirements. The draft 2023 annual report to Council was posted on the Ignite CDA website's homepage a week prior to the January 2024 board meeting. A public notice ran in the Coeur d'Alene Press a week prior to this board meeting, indicating that the Ignite CDA board will accept public comment on the annual report at this meeting. The notice states that the draft report is posted online and also states that written public comments are welcome and can be submitted via mail or email. Public comment on the Ignite CDA annual report will be a discrete agenda item at today's board meeting. When this agenda item is addressed, an overview of the annual report will be provided by the executive director. The Ignite CDA chairman will then ask if there's any public comment on the annual report. The board will then listen to public comment, then review any written public comments received. The board can then choose to discuss any issues as they wish, directing the executive director to work with the chairman on making any modifications to the draft annual report prior to submission to City Council. The board will then approve the draft annual report via motion with any proposed modifications as noted. So that's the background. I've shared with you the annual report. As I mentioned, it's located online on the Ignite CDA website also. I have it on the screen for the viewing audience. We'll just kind of walk through it and kind of show you the elements of the annual report. Introduction, overview on the first page. Then we talk about Ignite CDA strategic long-term foci. We focus on education, job creation and retention, housing, public space, create new and enhance existing public space, public parking, at this mill site redevelopment initiative, the health corridor urban renewal district, identification of potential new urban renewal districts. We also talk about board transitions. We have lost one of the founding members of the agency, Brad Jordan, after 26 years has retired from the board. We talk about Mr. Jordan, then we also welcome back Commissioner Armand to the board. And we welcome Chris Meyer to the board. What happened? The report has vanished. Not sure. Well, I can go through the report on hard copy. Not sure what's going on there. If you can. See if I can reload it.
Yeah, you want to try and reload it first?
Just work it off the thumb drives. Must be the storm. There you go.
There it
Or it could be the equipment in the library.
Don't say that out loud.
Pardon the interruption. Let's see here. Oh, I can do it from here, okay. So we have our Ignite board members. We have, we talk about the 2023 agency updates on certain initiatives. We talk about, for the final time, the Lake District, as we've closed out that district, and talk about the wonderful things that that district has produced for the community. We talk about the Health Corridor District, and provide an update. We talk about property divestitures and transfers. Report talks about Atlas Mill Site project in quite a bit of detail. We touch base on the Midtown Placemaking Initiative. The Museum of North Idaho, once again, that's been wrapped up. City of Coeur d'Alene projects in the Lake District, which has already also been completed. Discuss briefly the Riverstone West Phase 2 IRA and the Riverstone West Phase 1 and Mill River owner participation agreements. We touch base briefly on communications and outreach, key partnerships, and once again, the strategic property portfolio related to the Atlas project area. We have a few appendices in the annual report. We kind of go through the Exhibit A, past and current key agency partnership projects. We kind of list those by district. And for the last time, we include the Lake District Legacy pamphlet. We talk about the project in the River District, the Atlas District, and the Health Corridor District. Exhibit B talks about the status of the Atlas waterfront development in the project there. We show the areas depicted across the project site. And at the bottom here, we talk about areas sold as of December 31st, 2023, areas under contract as of the end of the year, and areas to be released in future requests for proposals. So we just have 4 areas left to go out for proposal. 2 of these are in Mount Hink. 7 is on the south side of Mount Hink, right here, and then 5A. We also show an illustration of where the areas are located in each discrete urban renewal district. The green is the Lake District, the yellow is the River District, and the pink is the Atlas District. And finally, as a change recently in the statutes, we include the full 2023 audited report as an appendix. That's all I have for the overview, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Tony. And now at this time, we need to open it up for public comment for our annual report. Any public comment? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment section and then I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion to approve the 2023 Draft Ignite CDA Annual Report. Is it going to be final and not in draft form?
It would be final based on your motion
Final,
here.
okay.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Very comprehensive, thanks, Tony.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks a million, Tony.
Sure. My pleasure.
And now it's time for your executive director's report.
Just a few items on the report. Mr. Chairman, Resolution 2401, destruction of semi-permanent and temporary public records. As the board recalls, we do this every year per our record retention policy. As you saw in the resolution, we're looking to destroy temporary public records and documents and statements dated prior to October 1st, 2021, and semi-permanent public records, documents, and statements dated prior to October 1st, 2018.
Need a motion.
I'll make a motion then to approve Resolution 24-01, destruction of semi-permanent and temporary public records.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call?
Evans,
Yes.
Jackus,
Yes.
Arman,
Yes.
Metz,
Yes.
Mandel,
Yes.
Meyer,
Yes.
Hoskins.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Next item, Mr. Chairman, is inviting Mr. Phil Boyd from Westcombe Engineers to provide an Atlas project update.
Welcome, Mr. Boyd.
Thank you, Chairman Hoskin and board members. It's, let's close that, hit here, and do this.
Have you got shoveling on sidewalks at the Atlas project today?
No, that's the homeowner's responsibility. I have a relatively brief update here. I'm just going to cover a couple of things at the top here. The PUD amendment number 4, which I have talked about to the board before, has been pushed to February 27th. After we looked through the schedule with Hillary at the city and Tony, decided it would be prudent to move it to after your workshop next week. So that worked out well. Construction work is paused because of weather. And then I just wanted to share a couple of general updates. You guys are going to see some of these slides next week, and I won't spend a lot of time on them unless the board had questions. But in putting the presentation together for next week, Tony and I were digging back through the archives, 5 years worth of archives, and it was interesting to see where we were and where we've come. The board will probably remember this exhibit that you saw over and over again. I think you guys used to tease me because I would show it every time in one of my presentations, so here I am showing it again. It's interesting to see what we had originally intended and now what it is now. This is an exhibit we actually updated to current. So we've gone in and you see Pepper Smock's products up here these are twin homes, his single-family homes here. Also down in here, this is the Toll Brothers. This is the area of discussion for next week, areas 11 and 20. But it's just interesting to see how the triangle piece came into play here, how this was kind of a weird configuration, but it was because we didn't have the triangle piece, and how we were able to move it into this much better configuration. The statistics, you just saw another version of this. This is the updated version showing our density here. I'll show you another slide in a second, comparing density. But one of the things that the board had wanted back in 2017 and 18 was a diversity of product type in there. And you can see there's quite a bit there's diversity of product type in here, including these twin homes, which we didn't envision at the time. But those became something that was popular. You saw them down here. Dennis Cunningham did them, and also the Smocks are doing them up in this area. This is the thing that I found relatively interesting. In 2019, the density that we had gone to the PUD, to the Planning Commission for the PUD, we were looking at a maximum of 665 dwelling units. We anticipate ending up somewhere between 475 and 567, a little less density. And the board might remember the reason we were pushing density so hard at the time was because we took a 12-acre park out of the land. And so, there was the relatively high land costs, and then you take that very, very valuable waterfront out. And when we were doing the financial feasibility analysis, we kept having to drive density up in order to make the math work during the district formation. But here we are at a lower density, and we're still making the math work, but obviously real estate has progressed quite a bit. And then down here you see another summary. The single family numbers are pretty darn close. The multifamily is a little bit higher, but that includes both for sale multifamily product and for rent. So the for rent product is over here, and these two products are about 75% occupied now. So they've leased up pretty well. And then the potential for sale product are down here, the 22 dwelling units in area 13, and potentially over in this building here, this building is one of the topics of the PUD, which I've discussed before with the board. Any questions?
Bill, I just have a comment,
Sure.
and it's just kind of, just looking at the commercial square footage, I know that, can you refresh my memory, was that based on demand at the time, or
The
Do
reason
we
that
have
it
to
went,
really, do we have to look at that again, is what I'm wondering.
the reason that it went down, at the time when we had gone through and done these plans for commercial here, on these two corners here, and in this area, we had had a pretty aspirational level quantity of commercial there. And we, I guess on our side and in our discussions with developers, because again, when we were early on in the process, we were actually out talking to developers and saying, hey, what do you think? Because the board wanted to gauge the private sector's interest in this. Because remember, we were all kind of like, how's this going to go? And they told us at the time, that's going to be really tough to put commercial down there because there's the rooftops in this particular area, there's not enough of them. It's not an easy destination to get to, and so it's going to be a bit of a challenge. So when we got to this level, where we're currently at 12,900, 8,000 of that is the restaurant that's planned for right here. So that's a big chunk of it, which again was one of the things we were really hoping for as a waterfront restaurant here. Because we think that's going to be a big draw, especially next to the park. And if docks ever become part of the area down here, we think it'll even be a better draw. So I don't know if that answers the question or not.
It does, and I was just thinking of the Mount Hink area along the roadway, like, would that be a possibility to have, does it lend itself to more commercial development?
It very well could, and there's probably others here that understand that on the board that understand that market better than I do. When we have tested it, it's been very soft because office is a challenge right now. Maybe there's a potential for grocery there, but the challenge with that is the ingress and egress, because this is a very odd, there's eastbound here. In order to be able to get to it when you're headed westbound, you have to go all the way to the roundabout, turn around, come back, and get in this way. So the access to this has made it a challenge, again, with the discussions with retailers and grocers and whatnot.
Yeah, and I wasn't even thinking large, I was just thinking of more restaurants or small retail or
Yeah.
something.
And I think some of that may come out of our discussions next week, depending on where you all head with the idea of using attainable housing here, pursuing attainable housing or market rate housing, or maybe something different.
Okay, just a question, thank you.
Any questions?
This is another slide that we put together. I think Tony might have wanted to see this slide at some point. Board also might recall when we were putting this together was, how do we RFP this project? Do we RFP it in big, huge chunks, or do we put it into bite-sized pieces that make it perhaps more accessible to local developers? Because if you're going to sell off half of it, can local developers take off a piece that big? We had talked about selling completed lots, and then we talked about selling them as blocks, not completed. And we sold 1 and 2 with not completed lots. And I think at that point, once the board saw, this maybe is not the most artful way to say it, how much money was left on the table, where it went from kind of wholesale to retail, I think it was clear that we needed to sell them as platted lots. And so 1 and 2 were the only ones that were sold at wholesale. And then we went to selling them at more retail because the lots were platted. But when you look at the math here, there's 6 developers in the site, 4 of them are local. And so I think that probably accomplishes what the board wanted to do, is try to keep that business local where we could. The builders that are in there, all of them but one are local. So Cavco, Standcraft, Atlas Building Group, Active West, all of those builders are local as well. So if the board was looking for a piece of success, that was a vision you had laid down way back in 2017, and we're seeing that materialize here. And the colors, this is the smock product. This is an out-of-town or national builder, Toll Brothers. The Butlers have 8 and 5B over here. Dennis Cunningham has this. Bluegrass, which is John Magnuson, Tom Andrell had this and sold it to Atlas Building Group. And then DeChase Mexis is the developer out of Boise. and this was built by Petra, which is, I think, a Washington company. So again, pulling these slides together, you see these little tidbits and thinking, gosh, I remember the board really kind of pushing that idea, and look, it happened, and it's probably worth mentioning to you. So that's why I brought this up for you. The other couple slides I had in here is just, you're gonna see these on Monday, but I wanted to show them again here today, so it wasn't the first day you're seeing them on Monday. This is actually the product that Butlers are developing on 5B, so right here. So this is up on Lumber Lane, and that's a triplex right there. And we've spent a fair amount of time, the ADRC did, working through the design of these. One of the things that we saw happen early on when we didn't have architectural standards is this area went very modern, and it kind of set the tone. As we worked through other areas getting developed, we kept seeing very modern, and we were trying to push it back to what I guess our vision, or the steering committee's vision had been, where a more traditional neighborhood. But we got a lot of pushback from the developers that that's not a product that's selling. And so they said, what do you want? Do you want a good residual land value and a product we can sell, or are you going to push us into something that won't be as sellable? And so you saw some of that happen. And this product is a little bit modern, but I will say that the Butlers and Architects West did a really great job responding to the ADRC comments. There's a lot of neat wood features that they added to it. And then this is the homes that look out onto the park. So this is Atlas Road right here. This is the Smocks product on 14 and 15, and you can see these are a little bit more traditional, but they've done a really good job on the design of these, because there's a little bit of topography there that you guys remember. This has the rock wall in the back, and they did a nice job of figuring out how to tuck the garages under here and still respond to all the design standards. And this image here is the twin home that Smocks are putting up on 18 and 19. And again, they've done a really nice job, just almost right out of the chute. We didn't have a lot of comments on this, but it doesn't look like a duplex, even though we don't call them duplexes anymore. We call them twin homes. But we think they've done a nice job on that. And that's all I have, a little bit of a walk down memory lane, but some of it came from putting the presentation together for next week, and I think it was worthwhile to point out some of the ideas that the board had made priorities back in 17, 18, and 19, and we've actually seen some of those come to realization here.
Thanks, Phil.
Yeah.
Any comments, questions for Mr. Boyd?
I'll just
I
say,
have one, Mr. Chairman, just to reemphasize Phil's comment about the tough time we've had on commercial retail in that area. I mean, the pushback that we received from the developers was pretty intense in time, because they just say it won't work, and we're still struggling with our national developer to kind of get their commercial squared away, and it's just the last thing in the world they want to do. They don't think it's the right place for it. So, but we've done well with the Chase Mixus on the House of Western coming in Area 13, and Area 5A that's going out for RFP again in this year, has quite a bit of square footage that we want for commercial or retail. And then how many times has that been out for RFP? 3 times?
Yes, yep.
And 3 strikes. And the commercial retail has been a big element of that.
You explained it well, though. There's not easy access.
Just chasing Tony's point there a little bit, the board, a couple of weeks ago, you guys did a boundary line adjustment in here to make that parcel a little bit bigger to provide fire access. And that literally has come out of 3 or 4 iterations on that site, and trying to figure out how do you get enough dwelling space in there for the dwelling units, because that's one part of their revenue stream, and then also provide for that restaurant. There's some accommodations that were made for parking in there as well, early on in the process. But this site has been a challenge as well.
I was just going to add, I don't know if Olivia wants to, being on the RFP process, just the kind of the vision and the principles, and then when it comes down to what the market will tolerate, and I'm pretty proud of doubling down on things like the park and the public space and access, but the commercial ones kind of dodged us. That's been a tough one. As to some extent, the density and attainability. It's just, there's a difference between what the community needs and what the market will tolerate. And so I think that difference between need and demand is real. But I think that we've learned, you know, it's like predicting the weather. The closer you are to it, the more fine-tuned you can be about it. But
Yeah.
it is interesting to see like what the initial principles were and how we've had to like hang on to those through the process.
Yeah.
Bill, on that one lot there where you had to do the line adjustment,
Yes.
have you got the approval for that from the city?
Yep, it's all been completed, and that parcel, that sale has closed, and I think the money's made its way to the city. Yes, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So, and they're headed into, just as an update on that, they're headed into entitlements on the western, because remember that project was phased, they asked to be able to phase it. So we worked through a whole phasing program with them as well, because we don't want them to land bank, not get too far into the weeds, but that was one of the other board objectives, is we don't want people land banking because you want the increment. And the increment isn't as good when it's land banked versus when it's built on. So we've went through, Daniel, I guess, is the one that went through the gyrations to make sure that the phasing was worked out, and they couldn't land bank phase 2, which is the residential part of the project.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, thank you.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Tony. Next up on the agenda is time for board commissioner comments. Any board commissioner comment? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. And that's a wrap, Jeff. Thanks.
Thanks, Scott.